It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Maya walked into the upscale boutique, her shoes tapping softly against the polished marble floors. She wasn't the type who usually frequented such fancy places, but today, something pushed her to try. She adjusted the thin scarf around her neck, trying to hide the fact that it was the only one she owned. The store was bright, filled with the latest fashion trends, and the air smelled of expensive perfume. Maya's eyes scanned the racks, her fingers grazing over the sleek fabrics, but she wasn't looking for anything particular. She was just trying to forget, even for a moment, the harshness of her life. Behind the counter stood the store manager, Claire. Claire was a woman who carried an air of authority, always perfectly dressed in designer clothes, and with a look that said she didn't have time for anyone who wasn't in her world. Maya walked up to her, a little nervous. "Excuse me, I was just looking around." Claire didn't even bother to look up at her at first. She was too busy checking her phone. Finally, after a few moments, she glanced up, her eyes immediately sizing Maya up. "This is a high-end store. Maybe you should try somewhere more suited to your budget?" Her words were dripping with disdain. Maya's heart sank. She hadn't come here to cause trouble, just to experience something different. But Claire's words felt like a slap in the face. She forced a smile, nodding quietly. "I understand. I'll leave." As she turned to go, her eyes misted over. The pain of always being judged for what she didn't have, instead of who she was all too familiar. But just as Maya reached the door, her hand resting lightly on the cool brass handle, something unexpected happened. She instinctively pulled out her phone to check the time, eager to escape the awkwardness of the boutique and find some refuge in the quiet of the street. Her fingers brushed against the cracked screen, and as she unlocked it, an alert from her bank popped up, drawing her eyes in an instant. The notification made her heart skip a beat. "A huge transfer of money has been deposited into your account." Maya's stomach tightened as she stared at the screen. She blinked, almost not believing what she was seeing. The notification didn't just say any amount. It listed an extraordinary figure, a number that seemed completely out of place in her world. $1,000. $1 billion. Her fingers trembled, and she could barely breathe. How was this even possible? She frantically refreshed the screen, thinking it was a glitch, but the digits remained unchanged. $1 billion. The money sat there, impossibly large, like a weight in her hands. She felt a dizzying wave of disbelief wash over her, and her mind raced with questions that had no answers. Who would send her this kind of money? It was impossible. Maya didn't know anyone with that kind of wealth, let alone the kind of people who would just deposit it without reason. Her chest tightened, and she stood frozen, her wide eyes fixed on the screen, her thoughts tangled in confusion. Her entire life had been marked by scarcity, living paycheck to paycheck, cutting corners, and always hoping for a little more. But this felt like something out of a dream. As Maya stood there, lost in the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, she didn't notice Claire approaching at first. The store manager had been watching her from behind the counter, her eyes flicking between Maya and the phone, a puzzled frown forming on her face. Claire had never seen anyone act so oddly in her store, and certainly not someone who was clearly out of place. It wasn't until Maya's frozen posture caught her attention again that Claire decided to approach. Her voice was hesitant, a little unsure. "Is there something wrong, ma'am?" Maya barely heard her at first, her mind still racing, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to ground herself before speaking, before her breath got too erratic. Slowly, she looked up from her phone, her face pale and still filled with disbelief. It took her a moment to find her words, to explain something that felt so far beyond anything she could comprehend. I think I just got a huge deposit," she said, her voice quiet and shaky. $1 billion. Claire raised an eyebrow, clearly unsure of whether to believe what Maya was saying. She had heard plenty of excuses before, people trying to pull off some ridiculous scam, or others hoping for attention in the most odd ways. But there was something in Maya's voice, something that made Claire pause. There was a genuine panic, an unshakable terror in her eyes that told Claire this wasn't just some wild story. This was real. $1 billion? Claire repeated, still unable to fully grasp what she was hearing. The skepticism in her voice faded just a little, replaced by a mix of confusion and curiosity. Her gaze flicked down to Maya's worn-out jacket, her shoes that had clearly seen better days, and then back to the phone in Maya's hands. Claire swallowed hard, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "Are you sure? That's a lot of money." Maya nodded, her fingers tightening around the phone as if holding on to some thread of reality. She had barely registered the store manager's words, too overwhelmed by what was unfolding. "Yes, but it doesn't make sense. I don't even know who sent it." As the words left her mouth, the reality of the situation hit her all over again. Who would send her $1 billion? What did it mean? The more she tried to make sense of it, the less she understood. She thought about the days of scraping by, her part-time job, the long nights of studying, and the months of doing without just to make ends meet. None of that seemed to match this new reality. Claire was silent for a moment, the wheels in her head turning. She looked at Maya's plain clothes again, her simple scarf, her modest jacket, and then back at the phone. It was as if a switch had flipped inside Claire's mind. The disbelief in her eyes slowly gave way to something else. A dawning realization. In that moment, Claire understood. She realized that Maya wasn't just some poor girl trying to take advantage of a situation. She wasn't someone to be dismissed. Maya wasn't who Claire had assumed her to be based on her appearance. She wasn't just another person struggling to get by. Maya wasn't invisible anymore. Maya wasn't just any girl. She was someone important. Someone with power. Claire stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't know how to process the shift in her own perception. $1 billion could change everything. It could change the way people saw you, the way they treated you. Claire could see it now, the difference between who Maya was and who she appeared to be. It was as if Maya had stepped into a new world, a world where the rules were different, where her worth wasn't defined by what she wore or how much money she had in her wallet. Maya, feeling the tension in the air, looked up at Claire, her eyes wide with vulnerability. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, more to herself than to Claire. This is too much." Claire took a deep breath, shaking her head as she tried to find her words. I don't know what to say." Her voice softened, and there was an almost apologetic tone now. I didn't know who you were." Maya forced a smile, but there was no humor in it. "It's okay," she replied quietly, her words carrying an unexpected depth. "You don't have to apologize. People always judge based on what they see. It's not new." The words stung in ways Maya didn't let on, but she held them back, refusing to let the hurt show. Claire had been cruel earlier, dismissing her for no other reason than her appearance, and that pain lingered like a heavy shadow. But now, there was something different in the air. An unspoken understanding between them. Maya didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, she realized something important. Her worth had never been about what she had or didn't have. It had always been about who she was. And maybe, just maybe, this unexpected windfall was a sign of something bigger than money, something deeper. The money wasn't what mattered now. How she chose to move forward, what she did with this power, was what would define her. Claire's face turned bright red with embarrassment. Her mouth opened and closed several times, as if she were struggling to find the right words. I am so sorry," she stammered, taking a hesitant step towards Maya. "I didn't realize. I thought you were just..." Maya could see the panic in Claire's eyes. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of shame, guilt, and fear. But Maya wasn't looking for an apology. She'd heard those too many times to believe them. "No, it's fine," Maya replied quietly, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions inside her. "You don't need to apologize. People always judge. It's nothing new." Claire's hands trembled slightly as she reached out to Maya. "I really am sorry. I judged you by what you were wearing. I didn't mean to insult you. Please, let me make it up to you." Maya stared at her for a moment, seeing the fear in Claire's eyes. She could feel the weight of the store manager's words, knowing the way Claire had treated her had hurt more than she'd let on. But there was something about Claire's vulnerability now that softened Maya's heart. "You've already made your mistake," Maya said, her voice steady, but there was a hint of sadness there. "And I've already felt it. I'm not sure what could make it better now." A few days passed after the encounter at the boutique, but Maya couldn't stop thinking about it. The money in her account felt surreal. She didn't understand why it had come to her, and it brought a new kind of pressure that weighed heavily on her. Then, unexpectedly, Claire reached out. She'd sent a message, an invitation to lunch, apologizing again for her actions. Maya, unsure whether she should even entertain the idea, decided to meet. There was something about Claire's humility that Maya found oddly comforting. Over lunch, Claire poured her heart out, admitting how the judgment she'd passed on others was a result of her own insecurities, of feeling like she had to prove her worth through material things. She told Maya how much she admired her strength and grace in the face of adversity. Maya listened quietly, her thoughts swirling. For the first time in a long time, she realized that maybe she didn't have to hide who she was anymore. The wealth she had inherited didn't define her, but how she chose to live her life could. And maybe, just maybe, this new chapter in her life was more than just about the money. It was about changing perspectives and learning to see the humanity in everyone, whether they wore designer clothes or not. The two women, once strangers, now found themselves on a path of understanding and growth, realizing that wealth didn't just come in money. It came in the kindness we gave to others and in the strength to embrace our true selves, no matter where we came from.